Hello and welcome to the Cuyamaga Institute, our Q&A Conversation for Exploration series. I'm Paul Robert, the Executive Director and President of the Institute, and along with my wife, Laura Lee, the Director of Research, Education, and Outreach, and on behalf of our Board of Directors, our advisors, our volunteers, and supporting members, we want to thank you for joining us today. The Cuyamaga Institute is an independent, nonprofit research organization committed to researching consciousness and the human experience, following the footsteps of our founder, anthropologist Dr. Felicitas Goodman. And as an educational institution, we take an open approach and invite scholars in related fields to help broaden the scope of our own work and exploration, and so that's why we call this Conversation for Exploration. And on these weekly Sunday discussions, we've had a full spectrum of topics, including neuroscience, anthropology, archaeology, archaeoastronomy, eco-spirituality, ecology, philosophy, psychology, mythology, shamanism, ritual, hero's journey, the roots of theater. It goes on, so much more, from the arts to the sciences. And you're welcome to visit our website at cuyamagainstitute.com. All of our presentations are free, and as a nonprofit, we want to invite you to become a supporting member, and we thank you, the community members that continue to support the mission of the Cuyamaga Institute. Today, one of the greatest challenges of our time is our changing climate. It's no longer a political argument. It's become increasingly difficult to relate to the different worldviews that have so many different perspectives on what things are happening. But the key thing here is to transcend our differences and look at what the science has to tell us. And in preparation for today's talk, I went ahead and visited the NASA website. I just wanted to see what the scientific consensus is on the topic of climate change. And they have a very simple one-sentence headline on the page. It says, "Direct observations made on and above Earth's surface show that the planet's climate is significantly changing. Human activities are the primary driver of those changes." That kind of covers it. So we're not looking to the government to make these changes. They're doing what they can do, but they've got lots of other things on the table they're distracted by in terms of trying to find solutions. So where are these solutions going to come from? We need to look to ourselves. Each and every one of us can have a role, and today's guest puts it this way. Climate healing is the largest engineering project in the history of humanity. Any project involving a large number of people trying to achieve a common measurable objective is, by definition, an engineering project. As an inhabitant of planet Earth, you are a team member of this project, whether you like it or not.
Well, I want to thank our mutual friends, Bev Bow and Don Fries, for suggesting our guest today. We were sitting around the table talking about, here are two people who are very much about plant-based diets to heal oneself. And we were talking about we cannot really heal ourselves until all of humanity is involved in this, until our whole biosphere, our whole planet. This is what true health is, the health of everything. And this is, I can't think of a better topic for Independence Day, because surely we need to break free of old thinking here that is locking us into such things as ruining our climate. So we turn today to their suggested guests, the systems analysts, for this fresh look, a comprehensive look, and the solution that lands squarely on ourselves, on our way of life, on the resources that we take from our planet, transform, and put back in, on the Western mindset, on the choices that we make daily, the tiny individual choices that in increments with 7 billion of us are overwhelming the petri dish, or the bathtub, as is his preferred metaphor, as our guest will demonstrate. He is doing something dear to our hearts. He's calling for a new worldview, a new story for our species, a new understanding of our world and our place in it. And the challenge, as he puts it, put on our chrysalis avatar and leave our caterpillar past behind. Let's together write a new story, one of human belonging to nature. Let's do no less than usher in this new phase of humanity. Our very survival is going to depend on it. Dr. Sailesh Rao, he has credentials. His earlier work on the standards of the video encoder and gigabyte connector communication technologies, we're using those today. Then he had an awakening. He made a promise to a grandchild. He turned his attention to engineering solutions for all of our future. His analysis of who we are, where we're heading, and how to steer from worst case to best case scenario, given our circumstances, both surprising and empowering. His books include Carbon Dharma, The Occupation of Butterflies, more metaphor, Carbon Yoga, The Vegan Metamorphosis. He's been executive producing several documentaries, probably the most famous, Cowspiracy, The Sustainability Secret, The Human Experiment, What the Health, A Prayer for Compassion, The End of Medicine, The Land of Amhisa, and more. Let us welcome Sailesh. He joins us from Phoenix, Arizona. Hi and welcome. Wow, what a career you've had. And what
Thank you.
What a change maker that you are. So,
Well, thank you so much for that introduction.
tell us your story about here you are having this important career in technology, and then this about face. What happened?
Well, I came home one day I was working on 10 gigabit Ethernet, doing the same thing 10 times faster. And I came home one day, it was winter night in New Jersey. And I sat down on the sofa and turned on Link TV. And there was Al Gore talking about climate change. And he was making a presentation to activists in San Francisco, and someone had videotaped it. And they were showing it on Link TV. And I was so shocked. I said to my wife, if half of what he's saying is true, I feel like I'm wasting my time working on 10 gigabit Ethernet. And she said, if you think it's that important, why don't you study it? So that's how I got involved. And within a few months, I went and told her it's actually far worse than what Al Gore is saying. So we need to close our company and focus on this full time.
Wow.
And so she agreed, and that's what we did. So I wrote to Mr. Gore and I said, how can I help you? And I got trained by him in November of 2006. And very soon I realized that he's not telling the whole story, and he's sort of stuck in the old model. So he cannot tell the whole story. So I started Climate Healers in 2007 to basically address this holistically from a systems perspective. Because that's what I do. I'm a systems engineer. And anytime there is an engineering project, people come to me and they ask, how do you solve this? And that's what I do,
climatehealers.org. I have to liken you to Buckminster Fuller, who at one point in his career did an analysis of all the world's resources and what are the solutions to live harmoniously and justly and with equitable distribution. I think you're doing the same thing, right? You're looking at the entire situation of the climate as a systems engineer, and then you're proposing solutions as he did. So I really love the big picture thinking. I think it's so important to take an accurate assessment of where we are. How do you describe where we are?
Well, we are in a very critical phase in human history right now. It is, so we are sort of facing two choices. Which way do we go? And like Lord Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, you always have choices. It's up to you to choose. But the system is so perfectly designed that no matter what our choice is, the outcome will be the same. The outcome will be the same. The only difference is how much suffering you want to undergo.
Back to the Bhagavad Gita. Yeah.
Yes.
It's so mythic. So tell us more. I know you've got a slideshow, and we will get to that. But can you put it into context for us so we understand how you arrived? What data did you look at? Why aren't others doing the same thing and giving us the big picture? Or are they? Are we just not listening? Why are we so deaf, and why don't we have the will to change?
Well, it is from a systems perspective, we are sort of deciding whether to go this way or that way, whether we continue doing what we are doing, which is basically we're heating the climate, Uh, so we have been in the climate heating phase of humanity, and we've done a really good job of it. We have
So
really heated
efficient.
up the Earth to a point where it can never go back to another ice age again, ever again. Okay.
Okay, so
we've-
stop right there. Okay, the Milankovitch cycles say that we should be heading into an ice age right now. 1,000,000 years of 7 cycles of ice ages. Glaciers expand, glaciers contract, on target. $100,000 year glaciers, 10,000 year, 15,000 year interstitial warming period. Okay,
right.
we'll never go back to that again.
Yeah, we will never go back to that again as long as we are around.
As long as humans
Because
are around.
as long as humans are around.
Okay, so you take humanity off the picture, and the Milankovitch cycles will eventually, the carbon will eventually, the Earth does what it does, and it could go back.
Right.
But we're here, and we're breathing out all this CO2 with our technology and cows and things.
It's hard to clean the guest room when the guests are still here.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Right.
I mean,
We've
we've
actually
had snowball
taken-
Earth, and we've had, Earth's climate has been a roller coaster ride.
Yeah.
Right. So what we have done is we have actually taken carbon that was sequestered for millions of years under the ground,
Yeah.
and we have released it.
Right.
So that's what's going to prevent the Earth from going back to the ice age for a long time, because it
Until
takes
we
time
run
for
out of
that.
fossil fuel, and then we're back to riding horses for transportation. And we shouldn't be killing all those horses out there, those wild ponies. We're going to
That's
need
another
them.
whole discussion. Yeah.
And then eventually the Earth there won't be any more stuff to put in the atmosphere. We won't be able to burn anymore.
Well, we cannot afford to burn all the fossil fuels either, because if we do that, we are potentially going to create the Venus syndrome on Earth. So we have to stop very, very quickly. Okay, and we have to figure out different ways of transporting ourselves, and we already know how to do that. It's not that we don't know.
It's called the sun. It's called
Yeah,
the
it's called the
wind.
sun. You don't have to go back to riding on horses again. It's called public transportation. I mean, sort of when we do things together, we actually minimize the amount of energy you need to do things. So it's not a matter of going back to the way things were thousands of years ago. It's deploying the technologies that we have created for the purpose of healing the climate.
Spoken like an engineer. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
So,
Yeah.
the story I tell is that there was no mistake. This is the way it was supposed to be, and we are at this time deciding which way to go, and it's up to us to choose. Right. And if we choose the healing path, it's possible for us to heal the climate and to reverse climate change and to bring back the ecosystems of the planet. But if we choose to continue heating the planet for a few more years, it's going to get harder and harder and harder. And I can quantify that. I can quantify and show you how much harder it's going to get the longer we wait. So in that sense, it's about modeling things and understanding where we are, and then making our choices,
So you
consciously.
said that this is the way it's supposed to be. This is a necessary step in human evolution, that we became technological geniuses, and that we've created all this wonderful, miraculous technology, but we need to use it correctly to create a future that we can all live happily on, us and the rest of the species on the planet. That is possible.
Right.
So how much does your own being raised in rural India and that mindset and that religion and that philosophy impact you to say, because that's a huge, beautiful culture that sees evolution in large scale.
Correct. Yeah, that it has a lot to do with that. At first, I was raised in that culture that said that we are all part of something much larger, and that we are just one bit of a whole, right?
Yeah.
And the more I got into science and engineering, I thought, oh, they were kidding me. It's not true. right? And that science has a better way of understanding these things and through basically dividing things up and understanding them better and better, right? And but when I started working on the environment, it all came back. It started making sense. The old worldview that I was taught actually makes sense from a scientific perspective. Yeah, we are doing what we were meant to do, and now we are at a crossroads, debating what to do, which way to go. And so it's important. The kind of stories we tell now is very important for our future and for our children's future.
I find it very empowering to say, we haven't made a mistake, we were meant to be here. That is so empowering. That releases so much guilt, right? But it also says the mythic heroes of old found their way. The hero and all the hero journeys found their way. And so can we. And we have the equipment, we have the willpower, we have the smarts, we have evolutionary forces behind us, guiding us to make this choice. We can do it. We need to know and believe that we can do it to set out on this journey, don't we?
Absolutely. We need to understand that we are running an engineering project on this planet, whether we like it or not, because as soon as we admitted that we are changing the climate of the planet, we basically have the responsibility to harmonize it and to stabilize it on behalf of all life on Earth.
If we were the agents of change, we can be the agents of change moving forward.
Correct.
Where
Yeah.
we want to be.
The agents of healing moving forward. So,
Healing.
and so it's our role, our job as a species to maintain the climate of the planet, to harmonize it, and to prevent the Earth from ever going back another ice age again. This is why I say, as long as we are around, there will not be another ice age.
So actually, that might be a good thing, because going into an ice age would be just as devastating, really.
Right.
Mile thick glacier overhead, as it is warming. So this might be our opportunity to come to grips and terraform a climate that we want, is what you're saying.
Absolutely, yeah. So the Earth, to me, the Earth is the perfect system design. Nature is the perfect system design. So as a system engineer, I'm in awe of nature.
Yeah.
I look at every aspect of nature and how it fits, and how there are no wastes whatsoever, and I'm just awestruck by how beautifully it was put together. And then I look at human beings and say, where do we fit, right, in that big picture? And so that's the story I had to tell. I mean, I had to sort of reconstruct it from scientific, from the scientific literature.
Maybe evolutionary forces designed us to do this healing.
Yes.
And one of the challenges, of course, we face is just the dysfunction of us, in not only in this country, but around the world, the disharmony, the lack of focus, the distractions, the mass distractions. So I really appreciate the fact that you're trying to hold a worldview of solutions, and I want to follow that path with you. But I also want to know, how can we get past some of this family dysfunction? I mean, it's huge. It's all around us.
Yeah. The family dysfunction is part of the heating process. So we have spent the last 10,000 years basically heating up the climate. And we have done a pretty good job of it. And so we have done, now we have overheated it a bit. And so this is a signal from nature saying you're done with the heating phase and you need to move on to the healing phase if you want to thrive on this planet. And because nature is such a perfect system design, no matter when we choose to start healing, we will have it path out, but it'll be, the longer we wait, the more suffering we are going to get.
Yeah.
But this moment in time to me is rather interesting, because the Milankovitch cycles say the periodicity of the cycles, the ellipness, the elliptical shape of our orbit, the tilt of our planet,
The axis.
all of those come together through small increments of less solar activity on the planet create ice ages, right? Till now, all that. Those wheels are grinding.
Right.
Those wheels are actually helping us right now because it maybe not offsetting enough, but it's going to be offsetting some of the warming.
Right.
So
Yeah,
it's
we have,
interesting
there
that
is
our
a,
critical time happens now when the solar system is in our favor, at least.
We hope.
right. But it's not so much, the amount of heating that we cause on the planet
I know.
right now is
Far.
about 3 watts per square meter. So for every square meter, it's like adding a 3-watt bulb, And the estimate is that Milankovitch cycles are about half a watt per square meter variation.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have overwhelmed it. But just half a watt per square meter was enough to change the temperature on Earth by 10 degrees Celsius.
Wow.
So that's the thing about the Earth is so sensitive now to slight variations in the amount of energy from the sun that falls on Earth, that the huge variations in temperature that happen. Okay. So to me, it's like what the Earth had was a passive feedback system to stabilize climate, and it had reached the limits of its usefulness.
Okay.
With passive feedback, it was going into ice age and coming out of ice age, going into ice age, coming out of ice age. So 10-degree variations in 10 degrees Celsius variations in temperature. And so it needs more of an active feedback. An active feedback system is what we can create. And we create it. Actually, we have done this routinely, So when I'm talking to you on the internet, there is a link that's connecting from my laptop to the server that has that active feedback system. And that is actually locking the clock on either side. And so when I looked at the ice ages, it reminded me of all the days I spent in the lab trying to get my clocks to lock.
Interesting analogy.
Yeah, it's the same, I was seeing it going up and down, and then finally it locks, right? And so, and we are exactly at that point where we are about to lock the clock. And so, and to keep the temperature constant. So we are really like the thermostat species of the planet.
Oh, I love that.
I'm going to ask you a quick question. A good friend of ours, Tony Hall, who is an astrophysicist from the University of New Mexico, asked the question. He said, Sailesh, why has science, engineering lost its credibility to effectively bring this message to the world so that it would be accepted? What is that drop off? Why is this not just accepted?
It is. It's a complicated story we are trying to tell. And so when you tell it in dry scientific terms, it's hard for people to grasp. So what I do as a systems engineer is I try to simplify it and make it easy for people to see the solution. And then we start refining that. You start with a global model that's easy to understand, and then you start refining it. And that's how I normally do things, and that's exactly how I did this internet connection as well. Come up with a high-level model for how this connection will happen, and then start refining it, and then making sure that what we implement matches what we said we are going to implement.
And it's going to take all of us. I mean, if all of us on this planet woke up and said, I don't want to use the word woke, that's now a political term, sorry. If all of us on this planet got on board and understood what we could all do, we could do this. It's going to take all of us. It's going to take every country. It's going to take all citizens. This is the call to action.
And we have to wait for the catastrophe before we really see that we have to make the change, and is that too late? Or there's a certain percentages that are say, okay, we see that the glaciers are melting, we see the rising ocean levels at a small degree. It's still not affecting my ability to go shopping at Walmart or whatever.
I believe in story, and I think you're exactly right. Tell the story in a way that we can be empowered, the way that we can understand that we can become solutionaries.
Right.
Tell the story. The world is made up not of atoms, but of stories.
That's a famous
Muriel
quote.
Rukeyser.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay.
Yeah,
Tell us the story. Are you ready for your slideshow?
sure thing, sure thing.
Okay, let's do this.
So how do we tell a story that allows us to heal the climate? How can we heal the climate from where we are? So it begins with understanding our role in the ecosystems of the planet. So as I say, in nature, every species belongs exactly as it is. So this elephant, may seem destructive at first glance because it's breaking branches of trees, eating the leaves and throwing the branches away. But in reality, wherever she broke branches of trees, that's where the sunlight streams to nourish the underbrush. Wherever the elephant trampled on bushes in the forest, that's where new pathways are formed. So the elephant has no choice but to belong in the ecosystem. No matter what she does, it's part of the larger picture. So in the same way, we also belong exactly as we are. And that is the story we need to tell. And we belong exactly the way we are because of our role in the ecosystems of the planet. So we need to set our context in time. This is the white line here corresponds to the temperature of the Earth over the last 650,000 years. Time zero is present time, is on the right-hand side, and 650,000 years ago is on the left-hand side. And you can see that the Earth has gone through several ice ages and warm periods. So the warm periods are very short and the ice ages are prolonged. And the Earth has gone through over 100 ice ages in the last 3 million years. And you can see that these carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere were from 180 parts per million to 280 parts per million. And it sort of matches the temperature profile of the planet. Okay, so in reality, what has been happening is that carbon dioxide is like a blanket that the Earth has in order to maintain the temperature on Earth at a level that is conducive for life. And over the last 500 million years, the sun has gotten warmer and warmer over time. And as the sun got warmer and warmer, the Earth has been shedding her carbon dioxide blankets.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, until it reached a point where the blanket is so thin that it becomes very sensitive to minor changes in the amount of energy falling from the sun. Just half a watt per square meter is enough to make it go from an ice age to a warm period and vice versa. So it's going from 130 watts per square meter to 129.5 watts per square meter. That's enough to make it go from a warm period to an ice age. And during this time, during those 3 million years, the Earth spawned us as a species. Okay, so think about this. She spawned us as a species in Africa, put us in an environment of abject terror because we don't run too fast, we don't climb trees too well, we don't smell too well, we don't see too well, we don't hear too well. We are a very ordinary species.
No
Yeah.
claws.
Yeah.
We are easy to catch. And it forced us to use our brains. Use our brains to defend ourselves, to control fire 500,000 years ago. And then using that to build weapons and to defend ourselves. And then 50,000 years ago, we formed partnership with wolves, dogs, right? And they lent us their sense of smell, their sense of hearing, and their sense of sight. And so they have much better senses than we do, thousands of times better. And so they lent us that, and they helped us become more powerful as a species. And this allowed us to migrate out of Africa, and we spread throughout the world in the previous ice age. And in the current warm period, which is shown on the right-hand side, something amazing happens. If you look at this warm period, it looks exactly like the warm period that happened 3 ice ages ago. Except that instead of going down to another ice age, the temperature stayed constant and it then went up a bit. And the carbon dioxide levels went up like crazy. And you say, what happened? What happened was that we started burning down forests. We started heating up the earth by releasing carbon dioxide from land into the atmosphere. So until about 5,000 or 6,000 years ago, the CO2 levels in the atmosphere matched what was happening 3 ice ages ago. And then you see it take off.
Mm-hmm.
The same with the methane, matched what was happening until about 5,000 years ago, and it take off. So by pouring all these greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, we prevented the Earth from going back to another ice age. So if you look at the temperature of the Earth, 20,000 years ago, it was well in the ice age. It came out of the ice age about 10,000 years ago. It reached above glaciation threshold. It went up, and it was on its way down to going back to the ice age 5,000 years ago, except through human activities, we kept the temperature constant. Okay, through burning down forests and raising animals, food, and so on. And then over the last 200 years, we discovered fossil fuels, and we burnt that up, and we increased the temperature by 1 degree Celsius, 1.1 degrees Celsius. And now we are here, and we are debating what to do.
Mm-hmm.
So the two possible futures are we continue burning down forests, we continue being a climate heating species, and we may reach a point of no return, at which point we could even get into a Venus syndrome on planet Earth. Because Venus has the same amount of CO2 as, same amount of carbon as the Earth does. But all of its carbon is in the atmosphere. So Venus has a temperature, a surface temperature of 460 degrees Celsius.
Ouch.
And we could do that too here. We keep burning all the fossil fuels. Jim Hansen tells me that Venus syndrome is a dead certainty if we burn all the fossil fuels on planet Earth.
Mm-hmm.
Or we can choose to change. We can become a climate healing species, and then we can bring the temperature back down to the thermostat setting and keep it there and hand it to our children and grandchildren and say, that's your job. Mm-hmm. Your role on this planet is to harmonize the climate and maintain it so that the Earth never has to go back to another ice age again. And all life can thrive on this planet. So you ask, how did we heat the climate? We heated the climate by creating a system that's based on domination, deception, death, disease, and destruction. It's very easy to heat the climate. You just burn things down, and lie to each other. So there's, we dominate the other species. We have created a system that's based on deception. We actually promote deception. So here, for instance, is how we deforest the Amazon. And you can see that we leave clumps of trees behind when we deforest the Amazon. When you ask, why do we do that? We do that because there is a scientific convention that any 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer grid that has at least 10% tree cover is designated as a forest. So we have done all this deforestation and we were pretending that we didn't do it. Okay. Mm-hmm. So death for the animals, diseases for human beings, and destruction for the planet. That's how we have been heating up the climate. And we have implemented an economic system, which is basically a global ecological Ponzi scheme. It's just the game we play, right? The games we play and the rules of the game allow us to play this Ponzi scheme. So we have an economic system which currently is all about growth. And to grow the system, we monetize everything because any Ponzi scheme has to grow in order for it to maintain itself. If it stops growing, the Ponzi scheme collapses. So we monetize everything so that when dead animals have more economic value than living animals, we kill the animals. When dead trees have more economic value than living trees, we bulldoze down the trees. And when sick people have more economic value than healthy people, we sicken people. And we endanger life on Earth through biological annihilation, climate change, and pandemics. We addict everyone into compulsive behaviors. Okay. We lie to ourselves about the root cause of pandemics, about the protein myth, the calcium myth. There are so many lies we tell ourselves, and we tell our children lies. And finally, we steal from the poor to enrich the rich. Because that's the rules of the game we have created. So in that game, if I go buy a pound of basmati rice for $2 at the supermarket, and I go and check how much did the woman who grew the rice really got, she got 5 cents a pound. Okay, and we call that profit. And we celebrate those who have made the most profits. Okay, so, but that's the rules of the game. On the other side, if I donate $2 to charity and only 5 cents gets to a recipient, I call that theft. And I insist that the person who did that go to jail. Right? So the game is skewed so that wealth accumulates at the top and doesn't trickle down to the bottom. Okay, so that's the Ponzi scheme that we are running. And this Ponzi scheme has been heating the planet. And it's based on 2 false axioms. So I say that we are in a double Galilean moment in human history. And Galileo had to proclaim or had to insist that the sun does not go around the earth goes around the sun. And only after we accepted that he was right, that the scientific revolution could happen. In the same way, there are 2 false axioms that we have to overturn in order to start the sustainability revolution. And they are just as fundamental as the sun going around the earth. Okay. The first is the false axiom of consumerism, which is that the pursuit of happiness is best accomplished by stoking and satisfying a never-ending series of latent desires in human beings. This is what I call the greed is good rule. And this creates an infinite consumption model, which is what, if you look at the MIT World 3 model, they are assuming that everyone is trying to consume an infinite amount of stuff. And it's absolutely not sustainable. Okay, and we know it's an axiom because an axiom is a truth that we take for granted. We know it's an axiom because we don't blink an eye when we see 3,000 ads a day. So we think it's normal.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the first false axiom that needs to be overturned if you want to stop being a climate heating species and become a climate healing species.
And declare your independence.
Yeah, and declare your independence, absolutely. The second is the false axiom of supremacism, which is that life is a competitive game in which those who have gained an advantage may possess, enslave, and exploit animals, nature, and the disadvantaged for their pursuit of happiness. This is what I call the might is right rule. Right? And this is also an axiom in our civilization because we don't blink an eye when we see a slaughterhouse truck passes by, or we see animals on leashes. We think it's normal. So greed is good and might is right cannot be the foundations of a sustainable civilization. Okay, but these are the foundations of the current civilization. It's the climate heating civilization. And we have built 2 huge machines to implement these false axioms. First is the burning machine of fossil fuels and industry that's constantly churning out newer and newer products for us to buy. And the second is the killing machine that implements the false axiom of supremacism. And this killing machine is killing over 80 billion land animals, 1 to 3 trillion sea animals, tens of billions of trees, about 40 million human beings every year from avoidable causes. Okay? And so this killing machine is literally killing the planet. So the question is, how do we overcome these axioms? How do we overturn these axioms? How do we shut down these machines? These machines are heating up the climate. Okay, both of them. So in March of 2022, the evidence is becoming overwhelming now. So in March of 2022, Antarctica experienced temperatures that were 70 degrees Fahrenheit above normal. And a chunk of ice the size of Manhattan fell off Antarctica. So in May of 2022, India experienced temperatures over 143 degrees Fahrenheit in the center of India, 62 degrees Celsius. It's a record. Okay. And nothing really lives with that kind of temperature. And there were animals dying in the streets. There were birds falling dead from the skies. So, and this is real. This is happening now, right? This happened in May of 2022. And fires have become so normal in the southwest of the US that people are playing golf with a huge fire behind them. But this isn't normal. Right? This is a signal from nature saying you're done with the climate heating phase. And we have been killing animals so fast that we are on track to wipe them out by 2026. So we wiped out 68% of wild vertebrates between 1970 and 2016. And we are on track to wipe them out by 2026 if we continue doing this. Again, you know, this destruction of the forests and destruction of the ocean is causing this to happen. I took the land use figures from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change and put it together in this map to help you understand how we use land on this planet. If you took all the land that we're using to grow our plant foods that we eat, 85% of the food we eat is already plant-based. Okay, it's already vegan. And if you take all that land that we're using to grow plant foods and put it in one spot, you will fill up Australia. But that produces 85% of our food. If you take all the land that we have used for building cities and highways and railroads and stuff, all the built land, it'll fit inside Madagascar. If you take all the land we're using for biofuels, it will fit inside South Africa. If you take all the land we're using to raise our animal foods, it will cover almost all of Asia, all of Europe, a little bit of Africa. And then if you look at all the deserts that it's creating, it will fill up the rest of Africa and the rest of Asia. Okay. So, and that's only producing 12% of the food we eat. And that food is actually making us sick too. Okay. And on this land that we are using to grow our animal foods, the amount of carbon that's stored on that land is only 2% of the total. So clearly there is a huge potential for carbon to be sequestered if we release this land back to nature, right? We take all the land that we use for timber, that will fit inside North America, Central America, and a little bit of South America. And the original forests are only in the bottom half of South America. Just 9% of the total land area of the planet. And you know, if you think what we're doing on land is outrageous for animal foods, what we do in the ocean is even worse. To get just 3% of the food we eat by total weight, we are literally destroying the entire ocean. Okay, on land, we deforest 30 million acres of land every year to grow more animal foods. In the ocean, we bottom trawl 4 billion acres of the ocean floor every year. To get just 3% of the food we eat. So the food system becomes a huge source of the problem and simultaneously a huge part of the solution. So I created a bathtub analogy to help us understand the role of the burning machine and the killing machine, and how do we turn these two off? So in the bathtub analogy, the numbers correspond to what is happening in the environment, okay, almost exactly. So 1,000 liters of water is in the bathtub. That corresponds to the 1,000 billion tons of CO2 equivalent that was in the atmosphere last year. So I made this analogy for my presentation at Glasgow for COP26. So the bathtub has 1,000 liters of water, and there's a baby in the bathtub. And the baby cannot be taken out. And the assumption is that the baby will drown if the bathtub has 1,200 liters of water. Okay, so now the bathtub is filling up with two faucets. The burning machine faucet is pouring 35 liters per minute into the bathtub. And the killing machine faucet is pouring 15 liters per minute into the bathtub. This corresponds to the 35 billion tons of CO2 we are adding to the atmosphere every year from the burning machine, and the 15 billion tons of CO2 equivalent that we add from the killing machine every year into the atmosphere. Okay. Now the burning machine faucet is connected to the aerosol tank, which has 350 liters of water. So this corresponds to the amount of cooling gases we have poured into the atmosphere by burning fossil fuels. And that's cooling about 1/3 of it's masking about 1/3 of the heating that we would have done otherwise. Okay? That's why it's 350 liters corresponds to 1,000 liters. Now this faucet is connected to the aerosol tank, so that for every 1 liter per minute that you turn down the burning machine faucet, 10 liters is going to pour from the aerosol tank into the bathtub. Okay, so that's a penalty that we have. This is what Jim Hansen calls the Faustian bargain of fossil fuels. Simultaneously, the killing machine is connected to the drain of the bathtub, so that for every 1 liter per minute that you turn down the killing machine faucet, it opens up the drain. It allows 2 liters per minute to flow out of the bathtub into the vegan reforestation tank. So the vegan reforestation tank has a potential of 2,000 liters, which corresponds to the 2,000 billion tons of CO2 you could be storing if we just return the animal agriculture land back to nature. So that's the setup. Then we ask, you're a plumber, and you have to come and stop the faucets so that the baby does not drown. How do you do that? So there is an order in which you need to turn these faucets off. Okay. So it turns out that the optimum solution. So the question I ask is, what is the minimum you need to raise the water level in the bathtub in order to save the baby and drain the bathtub without overflowing the vegan reforestation tank? So that will solve climate change. So it turns out that the optimum solution is to shut down the killing machine immediately. If we shut down the killing machine immediately, it opens up the drain and it allows 30 liters per minute to flow out of the bathtub into the vegan reforestation tank. And then you have to raise the water level in the bathtub to 1063 liters and keep it there for about 34 minutes, I think.
Which corresponds to?
34 years. So there is going to be a bunch of suffering. Okay, 34 years we have to keep the water level, keep the atmospheric CO2 level above where it is now by about 6% in order for us to solve climate change. But we can do this, right? Provided you shut off the killing machine immediately. Now, suppose you say, well, it's difficult to shut off the killing machine immediately. We are all addicted to it, and it's going to take us time to get over it, etc. Suppose it takes us 5 years to shut down the killing machine faucet. So I assume that we do it linearly. We go from 15 to 12 to 9 to 6 to 3 and 0. Then the water level will have to go up to 1195 liters. and it'll stay there for 29 years before we turn it off.
Drowning a baby. Yeah.
Almost drowning the baby for 29 years. So that's the amount of extra suffering that we have to undergo if it takes us 5 years to shut down the killing machine. Now, this is a lumped model, so I can actually refine it and make it more precise so that we can then tweak things independently, right? So we could do things a little bit better than this, than what it's saying, but the overall message is correct. That if we wait 5 years to solve climate change, 5 years to shut down our killing machine, we're going to suffer a lot more and for a lot longer. So what can we do? If we wait for governments, it'll be too late because our governments are all stuck maintaining the burning machine and the killing machine. In fact, that's their job. Their job is to keep the machines running.
Yeah.
This is why when the pandemic hit, the first thing we did was to declare slaughterhouses to be critical infrastructure and make sure that they keep running. This is why I say, actually Rob Hopkins said this. If you wait for governments, it'll be too late. If we act as individuals, it'll be too little. Mm-hmm. But if we act as communities, it will be enough, So you have to act together. We have to help each other. We have to understand what is the new system that we are working towards, and how do we go about helping each other get there together. As Buckminster Fuller said, you never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete.
Yes.
The existing model is based on infinite consumption, and it is reaching its limits. We know that. So the MIT World 3 model and the Stockholm Resilience Institute's Earth 3 model both predict that we're going to hit the peak around 2030, and then that's it. It's going to be downhill from there. Okay? And people are going to die in their model. And so we know that the infinite consumption model is hitting its limits. And clearly, pursuing an infinite consumption model is foolishness. And so I suggest that we create this vegan contagion model, which is people going vegan. And veganism automatically minimizes our consumption. So it becomes a finite consumption model. So we create a new finite consumption model based on the correct axioms. And then when the GDP or the sum of the two loops stops growing, I'm going to assume that the old model collapses and everyone gets on a ladder and comes and joins the new model.
Because they have no choice.
They have no choice, yeah. So that's how you create this new model, a climate harmonizing phase, a climate healing phase for humanity, and then reach a climate harmonizing phase beyond which we can maintain the climate forever. And the new model has to be based on the correct axioms. Because, it would have been impossible for people to create the scientific revolution while pretending that the sun goes around the earth. Okay. In the same way, it's impossible for us to create a sustainable civilization without fixing the foundational axioms. And so rather than the false axiom of consumerism, we have to have the true axiom of inner peace, which is that the pursuit of happiness is best accomplished by seeking it within ourselves, which is what I call the self-mastery rule, a finite consumption model. And this needs to be taught to our children, say in high school, in school itself. And the second is the true axiom of unity, which is that all life is one family where we each bring our unique skills to give all we can, receive all we need, and become all we are. which is what Dr. Shelley Ostrov calls the vitality code of life. So this is the correct axiom that we need to be implementing. And so this actually respects all life. It respects every one of us. We each bring our unique skills. And this is how you will create a civilization in which humanity routinely gives more than it takes from the planet. And as James Lovelock said, if as a result of human presence, the earth improves, we will thrive. If it does not, we will perish, right? So it is, to me, the part of the greatest transformation in human history that we are called to implement today. From a system of normalized violence to a system of normal non-violence.
Yeah.
Instead of playing competitive finite games, just all the games we play are like that, competitive finite games where there's one winner and all the rest are losers. We need to start playing collaborative infinite games.
Mm-hmm.
So, because that's the future. Sustainability is about playing an infinite game.
And that's a principle of nature. Right?
Yes, it's the principle of nature. And the purpose of an infinite game is to prolong the game, is to never stop playing.
Yeah.
Okay. From a predator species, we have to become a caretaker species. And we have to recognize that we used to be a prey species before we became a predator species.
That's a good point. Yeah.
You know, so it's through our technologies that we became a predator species. And so rather than using that technology to kill life, we need to be using that technology to take care of life.
Living re.
Yeah. Caretaker species. And I think we deserve a new name because we call ourselves Homo sapiens sapiens, which to me, which is Latin for the wise hominid. And I think there is a certain level of humility that needs to come in before we make this transformation.
Let's earn it before we give ourselves that moniker. Yeah.
Right. And I wouldn't even go there because I've never met a truly wise person going around saying he's wise or she's wise.
If you're wise, you don't need to say it.
Exactly. So I think we should call ourselves Homo ahimsa, which is a term that Judy Carman came up with. And that is a combination of a Latin word and a Sanskrit word. Ahimsa means non-violent. So it signifies that we are coming together as a species from around the world, and it describes our character and not our characteristic, right? And the civilizational shifts are from the domination oppression paradigm, speciesism, colonialism, racism, ableism, and patriarchy, to ahimsa and sacred relationships paradigm, veganism and radical sacredness. From implementing diseases and divisiveness among humanity to implementing health and harmony in diversity among humanity. From destruction and exploitation of the planet to regeneration and caretaking of the planet. From violence and cruelty to animals to kindness and compassion for animals. And from an egocentric culture of consumerism to an ecocentric culture of accountability. Because as soon as we admitted that we're changing the climate of the planet, we own it. Mm-hmm. We own the climate of the planet. And from a mindset of scarcity to a mindset of generosity. Because after all, if we think that there is scarcity on the planet, imagine how other animals are looking at it. So we have plenty. We have plenty. We've already extracted plenty from the planet. From a profit-driven economy to a service-driven economy. So it's a different game we need to play, different economic game we need to play, a different set of stories we need to tell.
Different worldview we need to adopt.
Absolutely. And it can only be done in an open source economy and ecology where all of our ideas are given away to the community. Because anything that has secrets and deception will fall into the old mindset.
Yeah.
And it's about tapping abundance in nature. Because just think, we have cut half the trees on the planet over the last 10,000 years. And if we bring back those trees, So from 5 to 6 trillion trees, we are now down to 3 trillion trees on the planet. So if you bring back those 2 to 3 trillion trees that we cut, and if even 0.2% of the trees are mature almond trees, they can replace the 840 million tons of dairy milk consumed each year. So that's abundance you can create on this planet. And so the 7 strategic actions that we work on at Climate Healers, first is education, education, education. It's about not only telling people this new story, but also helping to change the education system of the planet so that children are being taught to become climate healers. And then we are petitioning the UN to drop SDG 8, which is economic growth, and to replace it with SDG 18, which is zero animal exploitation, which SDGs are the Sustainable Development Goals of the UN. And by having SDG 8 in there, we are all pretending to be addressing all the goals by just growing the economy, right? So it's about bringing some authenticity to our addressing of the goals. And then I say, let's pick one goal and actually meet it. And that's goal number 2. Goal number 2 is zero hunger. The UN is saying it's going to meet zero hunger by 2030. And I'm saying, okay, let's do it now. Why are we waiting until 2030? Let's do it in 2022. Let's do it at least one day in 2022. So that's the Food Healers Initiative. And then we need to work on a constitution to heal the planet, because it's a completely different way of organizing ourselves as a species. We have to create a new open source economy game. Because the current game we are playing, the Ponzi scheme, we know it's a Ponzi scheme and we know it's going to collapse. So we have to figure out a new game. And we have to come up with a common spiritual initiative, because there's not a single religion in the world that says that greed is good and might is right, or the right way to organize societies. So there is commonality among all of us. And we have been saying the right thing, but not doing it. And finally, it's about creating a new ecology of food forests. Okay, to create the abundance that we need. So I ask people to join World Food Healers Day, which is November 19th of this year, where we want to, we aim to feed every human being on the planet a healthy, whole food, plant-based vegan meal. So let's do that on one day. Let's all eat healthy meals and let's all feel good about ourselves. Because it's only when we heal ourselves that we can start healing the climate or the planet. And so we have a number of organizations that have joined us for World Food Healers Day, including PETA, Food for Life Global, Happy Cow, Loving Heart Vegan Cuisine. And I mean, the restaurants that are opening up their doors and offering free food on that day.
Moo, everyone! Remember COP26 last year? I was the cow in the room, embarrassing politicians by speaking up about things that the politicians didn't want to hear, and how veganism is the only solution to stop our impending global disaster.
If we address the cow in the room, we have a potential to thrive on this planet. But if we ignore the cow in the room, we are definitely going to die.
My truths weren't to their taste. Our campaign was strong despite them. We got attention. We spread the word. I'm not joining the herd again at COP27 this year. I'm throwing my weight behind World Food Healers Day, Saturday, November the 19th, 2022. We aim to feed every human being on planet Earth a healthy, nutritious, whole foods, plant-based universal meal, raise global awareness, and initiate massive global action.
Now more than ever, we need to change the system, and we need your support.
Millions have pledged to help already. It's utterly fantastic, but we need more. Another short film and website and app that will be part of our global movement, where I go from being the cow in the room to the cow in the kitchen. Please make a donation. Every donor gets an e-card thank you from me. We can feed billions in one day. We can do it together. Come on, we've got this.
Aha, all right.
Thank you for that Thank you for that explanation.
Oh.
I know many people have some questions, but I want to start with, we're all focused on let's stop fossil fuels. And you didn't address that. You said let's stop doing the agriculture. Based on your math, we're spending so much of our land mass, so much of our water, growing animals to eat them, so much of our plants to feed the animals so we can eat the animals. So I understand that's a big equation. I've seen Cowspiracy. But what about the whole fossil fuel issue? How do the two relate?
Well, that's the burning machine faucet.
Yes.
And I did talk about how do we turn off the burning machine faucet. You don't turn it off, right? You don't turn that off first and not do anything about the killing machine faucet. It's exactly the wrong way to address the problem. But you have to turn off the burning machine faucet as well.
You have to do both together.
You have to do both. As any plumber will tell you, if you got two faucets pouring water into a bathtub, you have to shut them down, both down. You can't just shut one down and ignore the other. But there is the right order in which to do it.
What you're saying from an engineering perspective, even if everybody had electric cars and there's no more fossil fuel being used, it's the wrong goal initially, that we really need to look at the bigger picture, which is what you're bringing to our attention today. Yeah.
Well, first of all,
not eliminating that need,
we can't
but that won't solve the problem.
We can't power 7 billion electric cars right now.
Not only that, it's electric cars do nothing to take the CO2 out of the atmosphere, right? They just stop putting more when you're driving them. They do put more when you're making them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. So,
Always a cost.
it is. Yeah, it's there is an order in which to do things, and that's what models inform you. This is why we do models, to understand how do we do these things.
But growing more plants, right, would take more carbon and put it in the soil. Planting trees puts more carbon. The earth has a method to take the carbon out of the atmosphere and put it into the ground and kind of in a vault, so to speak.
So the initial bringing to the public's attention the work of Al Gore brings at least the attention in the right direction. And you're saying, yes, but that's only a starting point. It needs to go beyond that particular first conversation that we had from Al Gore.
Right. Yeah, we need to go beyond that. We need to look at the killing machine and the burning machine together. And when you do that, you realize that the killing machine has to be shut down as quickly as possible. And then the burning machine can be shut down gradually, right? So it gives us time to shut down the burning machine. Because there is all this aerosols or sulfur dioxide that we have put into the atmosphere from the burning machine that is currently cooling the earth.
You mentioned that other tank. Yeah.
Right. The aerosol tank.
Yeah.
It's like a third of it.
Yeah.
I appreciate the re-languaging. I appreciate we're the thermostat species. We can sit there and what we're doing is adjusting the thermostat. Let's adjust it in a way that makes sense. You need to re-language these concepts for us to really understand it in new terms. We need to rethink from the ground up everything that we're doing and see it for what it is and its impact. I wonder about the 1970s when, what did you have? I don't know when Jimmy Carter later had the initiative. Then we had an oil president. No, everybody go and burn fossil fuels. Then, back in the 1970s when we first were looking at solar and wind and alternatives, and we were rethinking the planet at that time, right? And then we got off base and we stopped. We could have had every house being made in an ecological fashion. Passive solar would have been so easy to employ in any climate, right? We could have built our structures different. We could have consumed, we wouldn't be in the geopolitical bind we're in today, right? Our whole world would look different if we had just done the right thing even 50 years ago. We had the first wake-up call, is what I'm saying.
It's true.
We didn't respond.
But
look what could have been accomplished now. We've got a lot of catch-up to do.
But yes, but Sailesh was saying it, but that still doesn't address the killing machine, and that was the one aspect of the entire formula that really would have the greatest impact.
And that's just what we put on our plate, right? And it's not even that good for us. I'm sorry. Yeah. I understand our ancestors in the Ice Age had little other choices.
Yeah.
Right. But to go.
It was a different time.
Go kill the mammoth.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if we had done this in the 70s, we wouldn't have we wouldn't have computers, we wouldn't have internet, we wouldn't have, it's because, at some point you say, I'm done, I'm saturated with myself, I don't need to go any further. And
That's okay.
right. So I say, well, probably that wasn't the right time. And
Right.
maybe that's why it wasn't, that we didn't get the proper signals. Now we are getting the proper signals, and now is the right time, and we can
We're
tell.
not yet failures. We are not yet failures, but
Well-
but we're looking at the abyss and wondering if we can leap over it.
And it
Right.
comes back to this concept of global consciousness. There has to be a time when humanity comes together that has a shared vision, has a shared need, a shared goal, aspirations.
Right.
Right. That makes sense. We can
And
open
it's
it up.
I would like to go to Bev and Don first to say thank you for bringing Salish to our community. Thank you for arranging this. Thank you for when we had the conversation. We cannot heal ourselves individually until the entire planet is healed truly. That you were prompted to say, well, you need to talk to Salish. He's got the story. So thank you, Bev and Don.
You're most welcome. Salish is our hero and
Right.
and
you.
our guide when it comes to thinking about this. I think he's, at least for me, he's brought up concepts that I don't hear anywhere else, sadly. But thankfully, we hear them from him, and just the more people that can understand the message that he brings, we think the better for our future.
Yeah, he spoke actually at one of our early Veg Fest 2017 or 18 and really wowed the audience. But, it's hard to sustain the message and the enthusiasm in the larger public that don't attend.
Yeah.
I want to thank you both for all the work that you do educating
Yeah,
about
these
plants
topics.
and
right.
plant-based and the health personally, the health globally,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
how fun it is. It's fun to be a vegan.
We're not really touching on the health benefits today. We're just talking about the social
The health of the
implications.
planet.
But yeah.
Health of everyone.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Thank you both, and I appreciate that. I got some other hands up too as well, and so I'm going to go to Tony has his hand up. Brian, you had a question as well. Can you follow up on after Tony does his? And
Ben Frederick.
yep, and Frederick has his hand up. That's right.
Yeah.
So okay, here we go.
Oh yes.
Hi, Tony. You're first.
Well, hi, thank you very much. I'm really impressed at the systems thinking. It's a beautiful thing to watch. And I guess I have a couple of questions. I've been a vegetarian for over 50 years, but I have A positive blood type, which makes it very compatible. Vegan, no, maybe close to it at times, but I eat very, very little plant food. I mean, animal food. But there's some people that can't, that will not thrive. Is there a way for them?
Well, there are, you need doctors to help you out in cases where you may have parts of your body that have stopped working because you have been eating this way for a long time. So our body is very adaptive, right?
Like the planet.
I mean, our body is very adaptive. So if we keep eating animal foods, at some point the liver shuts down and says, I don't need to do this function anymore of converting amino acids from non-essential to essential, or the essential to non-essential. And because it's principle of conservation of energy, right? So it doesn't need to do that function, it shuts it down. And it takes time for you to wake it up again. And but there are doctors who can help you with that too. So ultimately, we are a species that can thrive on plant foods. All of us can at every stage of our life cycle. That's something that the American Dietetic Association has established. So it is just a question of dealing with our issues, whatever medical issues we get as we do that transition.
One thing I really appreciate about your presentation, you're saying there's a way, there's hope. And I've heard so many presentations which are all gloom and doom. Forget it, all we can do is grieve, it's over. And you're talking about it in a different way. And I love the idea. I hope you're touring and giving lectures every week, not for maybe not for your benefit, but for the world's benefit. This is something that really needs to be heard, and how to make it bigger. I guess that's the question.
Right.
I really like the message. I wonder how to make it bigger, particularly in an age when schools are not teaching critical thinking. Fred has commented, well, the best schools do, but not to everybody, or not everybody gets it. But by and large, critical thinking is at a nadir now, much less than when I went to secondary school and college. And this really troubles me. At the same time, complexity is increasing. Documentation of everything is increasing. The manuals that the government operates on are thousands of pages long. Nobody understands them, but we try to operate. And so we're in an age of complexity that we've designed ourselves into, which makes it very hard to steer the ship.
And to see the big picture.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I am giving lectures almost every day. So
Thank you for this one.
I hope you'll come to New Mexico, and we must talk.
Certainly, I would love to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, Tony has tons of connections there at the university level, and it would be wonderful to touch base with the two of you at some point. Thank you, Tony.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm going to go to Brian, and then I'm going to go to Frederick. Brian, hi.
Great, hi. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Sailesh. This is a very persuasive and eloquent presentation that you gave today, and I greatly appreciate it. I had a couple of questions. First is about the model that you presented from the systems theory. Is that model available so that it can be actually interacted with and adjusted so people can dynamically real-time see as you change one factor, how it impacts another? And then also, if you believe the planet is on a path of experiencing a 4 degree Celsius rise in global temperature by the end of the century, and if so, the implications of that, or greater.
Yeah, well, if we continue doing what we are doing, 4 degrees Celsius is definitely in our future. but we don't have to continue doing what we are doing. So that's the lever we have available to us, And as for the model, right now I've been implementing it in closed form. I'm going to put it on Vensim or Modelica, one of those software tools, and make it available for people to come and play with. Yeah, it's
like a new
yeah, that would be really helpful. And are there organizations? I feel like India has an opportunity to really lead by example. And are there organizations that you've partnered with? I'm aware of like Tara Mitra, for example, Robert Ethical's work. And I just wonder what are some of the notable organizations in India that you've been able to partner with yet so far?
Yeah, I'm going to India next week to start a school, university, and an accreditation program that would accredit learning institutions in this line of thinking. So this way, we spread the word quickly, because I tell Indians, especially my colleagues in India, that the new system has to be based on yoga and ahimsa.
Yes.
And are you expecting Americans to do that?
Well, yes, but
exactly.
Lead the way.
Lead the way. Yes. Yeah, we have to lead the way. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Good. Thanks, Brian. Always very insightful questions. And I'm going to go to Frederick Smith.
A Vedic scholar.
And he's an adjunct professor from the University of Iowa. Hello, Frederick. And he mentioned in the chat room that he's Professor Emeritus. So that's what it is. Okay. And I want to get the title correct.
Yeah, let me just say, Dr. Rao, I saw you speak at the University of Iowa a couple of times. I was on the South Asia committee that invited you. And what you commented on particularly was, I'm sure you'll remember, is the project that a couple of my colleagues, Meena Khandelwal and Uday Kumar, had on cooking solar cookery in Rajasthan. And my questions, I guess, are another person. I think he'd already left Iowa by the time you spoke there, Amitabh Bhattacharjee, who's now the director of the Princeton Plasma Physics Lab. And he is in charge of, one of the few people in charge worldwide of a big project for nuclear fusion, and he feels that they're close. It only will take a certain amount of money. And me, here I spend my life in places like Iowa City and Santa Fe. And but when I go to a big city like Philadelphia or somewhere in Los Angeles, all I see around me, I just feel so depressed. How are we ever going to get through this? Because this HIMSA model is just too powerful for us to really, supersede simply by saying let's all be vegans, because that's not going to happen. And are there any technological solutions like drawing the energy from the sun, as Amitabh is at Princeton, or other kinds of, or the manufacture of fake meats, something like that? Is there anything that can help bring down the temperature, that can help pull us out of this situation? Are you an advocate of this kind of? And I'd also be interested in hearing about your university and where it's going to be.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, we need some possible burgers. Yeah.
Yeah, ultimately it is the foundational axioms have to change. No matter what we do, the foundational axioms have to change to what is true. And this is why it's important for us to create a new model. Even if there is a transition phase from the old model to the new model, that people are eating impossible burgers or whatever along the transition. Ultimately, the old model is based on growth, growth at all costs. And so this is why it is unstable, because the planet cannot grow anymore. There is no more available for people to grow into. And so this is why we have to create a new model and keep it ready for people to jump, and help them jump from one to the other. So, so it's more like a sociological experiment. We are all part of some large game that we are playing, and it's bringing that playfulness makes it easier for people to join in. That's what I feel, And this university is, we are starting it in Coimbatore, India.
Oh, Coimbatore.
Yeah, Coimbatore, India.
I've been there many times.
Okay. So it's still conceptual, but we are talking about it, and a lot of people are coming from around the world.
What is the name? What is it going to be called?
You're calling it the Jiva Karuna.
Jiva Karuna.
Yeah.
We talked with a gentleman who'd read all the Marvel comic books and was a real advocate of how much society is reflected in comic books and how many kids read them and how it shapes the creatives of the future.
And the need for superheroes.
And the need for superheroes, right? And how we shape our superheroes. And I asked him that question, why isn't there comic book stories? Because we're addressing the kids who are going to be taking over the world, to make this transition, to have new models for society, he said, oh, it would be boring. I'm like, no. No, this is fascinating. This involves everything. This involves every fiber of our being. This is the ultimate hero journey that we are all on collectively, right? So where are the people writing to where the kids are, to where the general population is, to the films that we watch? Where are the new superheroes that can call forth? There's an opportunity here to tell this story, as you mentioned, and make it a game. Where's the games? Where are the games where it's not about shoot 'em up and destroy because we're teaching kids all of those functions, the death, destruction, disease. We're teaching that in every possible way. Where are we going to change the game so that we're giving it out in a way that we can actually consume it on a global scale? Who are the change makers in these realms, and can you address them as well? Here's the new story. Here's the new vision for humanity. Here's the new mandate. Here's the new challenge. Here's the new journey that we must all, that's where also I think this needs to go.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. There is a lot of work to be done in myth making and in storytelling. For me, my hero is my granddaughter.
Yes.
She's she she literally changed my life because until she was born, I was a very depressed environmentalist. I thought there was nothing I could do, and I'm just going to have to sit here and watch us go down the tubes. And she had this playful look in her face, and she had this smile on her lips, as if she was telling me, "What do you mean I don't belong? I belong exactly as I am, and you are a fool. You haven't understood me." So that got me on this journey of discovery, and I discovered William Ruddiman's work on the early Anthropocene theory, and that started me on this, putting the pieces together for this new story. And she's the one who made me promise her that the world will be vegan by the time she's 16. So she's been invited to come and inaugurate this university in India. So, because she held my feet to the fire and said, do it. Because until that time, I thought, who am I to do this, right? Who am I to do this? It's only when I realized, that this is an engineering problem. And
you're an engineer.
And I'm a systems engineer. In fact, a systems engineer is the first person that engineering problems go to.
Yeah.
And systems engineers are the ones who say, okay, here is what the overall model looks like, and this is what we should be doing.
Beautiful.
So that's my role, actually. And so I'm just fulfilling my role now.
What's the catalyst, the chrysalis to the cocoon to the butterfly, right? The caterpillar to the butterfly. Explain that metaphor a bit more, if you will.
So the caterpillar is an essential part of the butterfly. Okay, it's the first thing we need to understand. Without a caterpillar, there is no butterfly. And the caterpillar is a blind consumer. So it's just consuming. And then he stops because he's grown beyond his skin. And then he builds a cocoon around himself and thinks about what he has done. To me, that is actually the pandemic. The pandemic put us in the cocoon. And so think about what you have done.
Children, you've misbehaved, says Mother Earth. Go to your room and think about it.
Think about it, yeah? And then the cells of the caterpillar kind of dissolve. They all become imaginal cells. And each imaginal cell then imagines what it could be as a butterfly. Right? And then different parts of the butterfly get formed, the wings and the proboscis. And when the butterfly emerges, the butterfly is a very discriminating consumer. She only sips nectar from flowers. And in the process, she pollinates flowers. She regenerates life.
Yeah.
Right? She undoes the damage that happened in the caterpillar phase and some. So actually, she's a net asset to the planet. In the same way, we have this opportunity. Now we have been put in the chrysalis phase. Now we are imagining what can we be as a butterfly. And so we have to create these new systems. So there is work to be done. It's not about just, it just happens on its own. There's work to be done. And I think, all of us who have been trained academically to think and who are now retiring have this obligation and this responsibility.
To offer.
Right.
Yeah, this is what we have to offer now,
Right.
To create this new system of organizing ourselves that imagines what the butterfly could be, where humanity routinely gives more than takes from the planet.
And that nature built in this pretty miraculous transformation of atoms and cells and molecules in this soup, in the cocoon, to create an entirely new creature. So we have that capacity as well. Part of it will be our technology. Fred mentioned, and thank you, Fred, solar ovens. I think that's one of the solutions you propose. If you want to get, why not? The sun's there. Solar ovens are pretty easy
burning
to,
wood.
to design. What are some other solutions technologically that we need to start employing?
Accessible.
If we can stop building the weapons and we can produce the living as Bucky Fuller says, what is that that's going to help?
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of reimagining how do we engineer things. This is why I tell my engineering colleagues, hey, you are here at the right time. Yeah, you're retiring at the right time. And so I need all of you to come together and figure out these new processes that minimize waste, that maximize recyclability, that minimizes the entropy loss. And so it's a different mindset altogether in the design process, because we have been taught engineering, assuming that you have an infinite planet, that there's plenty of places to throw waste around. No, there isn't. So we are pouring 250 billion tons of toxic chemicals into the environment every year. So think about that. That's 250 billion elephants every year into the environment. And they don't go away. They get absorbed by trees. So they're basically, wood has become really toxic to burn. Yeah. Every time a woman cooks with wood in the village, it's as if she's smoking one pack of cigarettes.
Wow.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So this is why, we have to rethink everything. And so our food system has to change, our engineering education has to change, all our engineering processes have to change. Our healthcare system has to change, because it's no longer about disease care. It's truly about healthcare, making sure that people are healthy from the outset, so that we become effective at contributing to the planet. I call it the oxygen mask rule, right? So you have to heal yourself. You have to put on your own oxygen mask first before you go and help others.
Exactly.
We saw what a pandemic can do to our supply chain. We saw what, and there was overall a small percentage of people that died during the pandemic. Imagine the next one. Imagine what climate change. Imagine starvation. Imagine mass migration. Imagine all the chaos that's going to ensue, right? And how are we even going to function as a world if we get to that point where half the population's taken out? How are we going to function?
Right?
I mean, if we don't do it now, it's just going to be that much steeper an uphill climb.
Right. Yeah, that's what our models are also showing, right? If it takes us 5 years to shut down the killing machines. Yeah. But at the same time, I say, it's like we are on a ledge high up in the mountain. And I say, when you're on a ledge high up in the mountain, you don't focus on how many bones you're going to break if you fall on this side, or how many bones you're going to break if you fall on that side. You focus on the next step forward on the ledge.
On the leap over.
Yeah. And then you keep going, keep going forward on the ledge and focus on the solution. Don't focus on the potential problems if you don't implement the solution.
Yeah.
So this is where all my energies are focused on, how do we solve this problem? And what are the things we need to do to get these solutions in place?
Yeah. We have a question from Bob Woodrow. We call him Woody. Yeah. Woody, go ahead, turn on your mic.
All these solutions are really great. We can do those. When I was a 16-year-old, I understood how to solve all the problems in the world. The problem is how to get people to come along, how to get people to want to solve the problems. Mm-hmm. I thought a global pandemic like COVID might be a wake-up call. I thought climate change and might be a wake-up call, but it is not. We still have tremendous pushback. I mean, we are a very small minority of people saying let's solve the problem. Most of the people are saying don't interfere with us. So how do we change the mindset of the vast majority of people so we go and solve problems?
Yeah.
Right. Good question. I focus on those who are on the fence. And I want them to come over and join and be active. So that there are more and more of us working on solutions. And so this way, I don't focus on those who are far away, who are saying, oh, there is no problem, or who are saying, I don't want any of your solution. I'm going to insist on eating animals or whatever. I said, go ahead. I'm not interested in talking to you right now. I'm only interested in those who are on the fence. Because the more we get people who are on the fence to come over and actually do things with us, there'll be more people on the fences. Okay, so this is how social transformations happen. You know, this is how systems change as well. So, the greatest leverage point for a system transformation is the paradigm of the system. It's the foundational axioms of the system. So I never tire of telling people that the foundational axioms of the current system are absolutely flawed. And no one argues with me about that. They all admit it, you know? Yeah, it's absolutely flawed and it's absolutely not true. And therefore, you can try all you want, you know, with the old model, you will never, ever get to a sustainable civilization that way. Just like you would never come up with a theory of gravity pretending that the sun goes around the earth.
Yeah. How did we get to this mindset? That's been a real key question for me. How did we get here? What were the forces to bear that shaped this? Why do we think this is the only way that life can be?
Yeah, it's all about maintaining power and telling you stories that help maintain the power among those who have the power.
Right.
Yeah.
So
it's writing the stories that we read.
Yeah. There is a whole story in the Vedas, pre-Vedic times actually, called, it's the cosmic fig tree story. I don't know if you've heard that story.
No, could you tell it, please?
Yeah, it is the exact equivalent of the knowledge tree story in the Bible. But it helped me understand the knowledge tree story in the Bible. So that's why I consider it to be the mother story. So this story, the role of Adam and Eve is played by children.
Okay.
And the role of the serpent is played by an uncle. And it's not an apple tree, it's a fig tree. So the story begins with children playing with sticks and stones and rag dolls on the floor of their hut in the middle of the forest. And their uncle comes to visit them. And their uncle says, why are you playing with sticks and stones when the cosmic fig tree is right outside your hut? So go out under the tree and wish for anything you want and it'll give it to you. Then you can be playing with real toys instead of these trifles. The children don't believe him. How can there be a tree where you go and wish and it gives it to you? So they wait until the uncle leaves and then they rush to the tree and they start wishing. They wish for sweets and they get them. And they gorge on the sweets and they get stomachache. They wish for toys and they get them. And they play with the toys and they get bored. Then they wish for fancier toys and that leads to greater boredom.
Yeah.
There was something about this tree that they did not understand. It grants you what you wish for, and along with it comes the exact opposite, because that's how the universe is built, of dualities. The children didn't know that. All they knew is that they couldn't stop wishing under the tree, and the more they wished, the more miserable they were. Then they get to be young men and women, and now they're wishing for what young men and women wish for. The four main fruits of the tree were sex, fame, money, and power. And with each comes its opposite, and the result was more misery and suffering for the young men and women. Then they get to be old men and women, and they congregate under the tree in 3 different groups. The first group says, we were so happy when we didn't know about this tree. So this has all been a hoax and a farce. And the story says they were fools, but they hadn't understood the tree. The second group says, we must have been wishing for all the wrong things. If we could go back and wish for different things, I'm sure we'd have been a lot happier. And the story says they were bigger fools, but they'd understood less than nothing about this tree. And the third group was the most foolish of the lot, but they come under the tree and they say, we are so miserable, we wish we were dead.
Yeah.
And the tree grants them the wish. And they're immediately reborn underneath the same tree, because the tree always grants wishes in dualities. Okay? So meanwhile, a lame child was watching all this from inside the window of the hut. He also wanted to go out and wish for a good leg so he could walk. But there was such a crowd of people thronging under the tree, they pushed him away and he couldn't get through.
Mm-hmm.
So he stood there and he watched. And he saw how the tree was making everybody miserable. The people who were wishing were miserable. People who were trying to get to the tree were miserable. All the animals were suffering because of all the wishing. And then he had a brilliant flash of insight. He understood the cosmic swindle that was being performed under the tree. And with that, he began to feel a well of compassion come from within him for all the suffering under the tree. And he lost the desire to wish. He became detached from the tree. And with that combination of compassion and detachment, he was the happiest of the lot. So that's where the story ends, right?
Yeah.
In the Vedas. And in the Upanishads, they teach you what they taught you in the Vedas, right? So in one of the Upanishads, they tell you that the wishing child and the watching child are inside each one of us.
Mm-hmm.
That's our duality.
Yeah.
And it's up to us to enable our watching child and to observe our own wishing child with compassion and detachment.
Yeah. Emotional
And
intelligence.
yeah, and also, in the Bhagavad Gita, the same question comes up, right? In the Bhagavad Gita, the main question that Arjuna asks Lord Krishna is, why should I wish under the tree?
Mm.
Why don't you? You are God, you take care of the problem. And Krishna said, how do you think I do it? Through you.
Mm-hmm.
And then he taught him how to wish under the tree. He said, if you go under the tree and you wish for the benefit of everyone else, and you say, I don't want anything from this tree for myself, then you will be perfectly happy wishing under the tree, and everyone will be happy because of your wishing.
Yeah.
And as a species, we are the only species that has access to this wishing tree. And we should be wishing for the benefit of every other species, not for ourselves. That would make us use this tree wisely.
And with that comes our true health. Right?
Yeah.
When
Exactly.
it's all healed. Yeah.
And maybe following up on Bob's question, and that is, and your answer, that talking to those that are on the edge, part of the discussion with people on the edge sometimes is vegan food, but how do I prepare it properly to taste good, that I'm replacing something.
Talk to Bev and Tom. They've got good
Well, I
info.
was going that direction. I was going to say that we just hosted a week-long event at our institute with the vegans that came, and the chefs that cooked meal after meal, and every meal was delicious. So when it's done properly, those of us that have that hard time, that we're in that transition, we want to make sure we have good quality food. So it's good instead of buying a $60,000 or $70,000 electric car, maybe learn how to cook a good meal.
That was your
Yeah.
comment. When you went plant-based. It's like, oh, there's so much more variety of food, and it's all delicious, and I feel better. That was your comment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's great.
Yeah. See, that's the thing, right? So we have created a food system that's geared towards entertainment, as food as entertainment. So our food system is optimized to ensure that the most exotic food is available to the richest person at any time.
Yeah.
That's what it's optimized for. It's not optimized to ensure that everyone gets adequate nutrition, which is what food systems should be about, right? So I'd say that imagining a new food system in which healthy food is freely available to everybody. Healthy food is freely available to everybody, and it's even cooked by the community.
Mm-hmm.
There are some people who love to cook, and let that be their contribution, right?
Yeah.
And some of us don't know how to cook like
Growing
that.
it, right? You can grow food just about anywhere.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Growing it and serving it to people, that becomes part of our new food system. So I say that building the new system begins with building a new food system.
Right.
a new philosophy. We just saw a news report where even in cities, right, you want to grow food locally so you don't have to transport it, and they're taking derelict spaces
Abandoned
between
lots.
yeah, and creating hydroponic vertical and systematizing it and all of that. So it's easier to grow food than animals, a lot less cost to grow.
Yeah.
So we can feed everybody. People can grow it locally. So, and as Don and Bev will tell you, there's lots of nutrition and protein even in lettuce.
What's Don and Bev's website? HealthySedona.com?
What is your website that you want to, and put it in the chat room as well?
Yeah, I was just going to put it in the chat for anyone who wants support to make a transition to a whole food plant-based lifestyle. We have what our nonprofit organization supports is what we call the Healthy World Vitality Plan, and it's based on small groups. It's been virtual so far, but small groups that support each other and learn together. And so it's hwvitality.com, and you can learn all about it.
Yeah, it stands for HW Vitality stands for Healthy World Vitality, but we shortened it.
Okay.
.com, and people can go there and they can sign up for our 10-week intensive courses taught by trained coaches that we've trained. And the next course starts September 12th, so you can go on the website right now and sign up for a class that starts September 12th.
And Sailesh, I loved your slide about vitality. We chose that word.
We chose it
because we liked it, but yeah, it gave it a whole new depth. So thanks for that.
Yeah.
It's a whole new community to join as well. I mean, there's a vibrant, we go to your Thanksgivings, Bev and Don, and there's 60 people there. There's such a vibrant community, and start one of your own if you don't live in a town that has a vibrant community. It's actually fun, and a lot of education everywhere online.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think part of what we think is that some of what makes this hard for people to make this transition is a couple things. First of all, they don't know about it. Secondly, it just seems kind of overwhelming because there's a lot of information, and it's just different than how they've lived. But the third is that food and how we eat is so ingrained in our social life and our cultural life, and people feel like they're going to be isolated. They'll be the weird ones out there. And so what we try to do is provide the information, provide the skills, but then provide community so that you're not the lone person out there. And in fact, it's a wonderful community. It's a compassionate and kind community, and fun. And so that's really what we're about.
We're about building community, and whole food plant-based lifestyle is part of that, but also part of the lifestyle is just the entire community and the support we give to each other.
Well, and also to sleep well, right? To have social connections, to have a clean environment that's not toxic, to have work that you love. There's so much that goes into happiness, and they've done a whole science on happiness. Have your body feel healthy and vibrant is part of that. We say that our spiritual technology, one of many out there, is about flourishing, about compassion and generosity and emotional resilience and joy and creativity and feeling one with the all. I mean, literally feeling one with the all, right? And thank you for partaking of our work when you were there with us. So I think it's just the whole system, and if our whole society supports it, if everybody was on board, and it would be fun, it would be normal, it would be natural, right? We'd all do. I mean, I can just see the vision, can't we all? If these were our values, if this was, you go into restaurants and this was they're serving, if you go and everybody's growing beautiful plants around you, if the animals are our pet, I mean, it's the vision is so tantalizing.
Right.
It's so doable.
Yeah.
I think folks will find interesting our July 1 newsletter that just came out on our website addresses the environmental and the animal health and welfare segments significantly, so we can encourage folks to read that.
How can we be agents of suffering, of a whole other species suffering and disappearing, and call ourselves healthy?
We give credit to Sailesh in a couple of realms there for his research film.
You know what? I'll say one more thing. For me, when I look at the state of the world, it's easy to go to despair, and despair isn't a place I like to live. Right. And to me, the antidote for despair is to have something I can do. And when I realized that there's something I can do 3 times a day, every time I put a bite of food in my mouth, that trends in the right direction, trends away from the problem. It's just personally, it is. It's healing, and it allows me to, it's kind of like, it's my step on the ledge, I guess, as Sailesh described it.
But also you're educators, and you're an educator. We have so many educators among us. We're all trying to put our drop into the ocean, right? That's helpful. I say, let's move the dial through dialogue, right? Let's talk about it. And I think that it's disempowering to feel like I'm the only one. We're taught in our society, don't put your head above the rest that lop the head off the poppy. You get mowed down if you're different in our society, any society, right? But if you know of other people walking down the same road with you, you can join in that community and feel that you're getting somewhere, that you're making a difference, right? And it's fun. We're social creatures. We need community. We need like minds.
We have a couple more questions, and hands are up and stuff, so I wanted to thank you both so much. Yeah, so your link is now in the chat room as well, hwvitality.com. Shoshana is contacting us from Ashland, Oregon, and she talked about that there's a great community down there of growers that are working together.
I wanted to tell everybody that SOU, Southern Oregon University, has a very, very visionary leader in Vincent Smith. He's the director of the Division of Business, Communication, and the Environment. And that department of SOU has transformed an old field that was kind of a dumping ground for building materials into a 9-acre incredible farm run by the students. They sell the food to the university dining facilities, and I think they sell them or give them to the schools, like the middle school, the elementary school. They bring children over for tours, and they cook at the garden. Wow. It's really amazing. And I live in a senior residency community, and we're starting to create a collaboration with the university so that the students come to our community garden and our elders go up to the university and see what we can do about growing our own food here, because we don't like getting our food from Cisco, from our dining room. So at any rate, there's a lot of potential, and I just wanted to call out Vincent Smith and the Southern Oregon University. I think there's some really fun.
It's so inspiring to hear what people are doing to solve this, and these creative ideas, and how exciting they are. And of course, kids want to join in. Kids are so wanting to be assured that their future is going to be there for them, right? They're all on board.
And a shout out to Ashland, Oregon. It's a really great community for those of you that don't know about it. They've got a university setting. They've got the theater, Shakespeare Theater. Yeah. They have a real progressive community. It's
gone to many of those places.
Yeah. It was one of the places on the map that we put a pin and said, this is a special place to watch.
Wonderful local organic farms too. Lots of farms.
It's great.
Yeah, it's a great place.
Thank you so much for joining the conversation.
Any other solutions? I know, Brian, you'd have a lot of solutions that you'd like to.
John and Felicia have their hands up here.
Hi, John and Felicia.
I wanted to comment on the question. I think it was Woody who said earlier about how do we get people to change. And
Right.
Sailesh's great example is that he focuses on people on the fence. And I got to thinking about that analogy. I think it's an awfully good analogy for combining with the concept of tipping points. We've heard of tipping points.
Yes.
And so oftentimes you see where a certain thing that's kind of fringe gets a little traction and more people are talking about it. And then all of a sudden, there's just this mass movement towards it. And the fence is great for that, because if you imagine yourself walking along a sidewalk and next to a fence that you can't see over the top of. And every once in a while, you see someone sitting on it, looking the other direction. And then there are more and more people sitting on it. And then some of them are jumping off the other way. At some point, you're just overwhelmed with curiosity about what do I do? You can't just keep walking. You have to get up and look or ask somebody what's going on. And then when that happens, everybody is climbing over the fence, and pretty soon the fence just gets pushed down, everybody walks across.
Yeah.
So it just hit me as that's an important part of this, getting people on the fence and working with them to jump off, because more people will get on. So,
Yeah, well-
this is Independence Day tomorrow, right, in the U.S. So I know we have a lot of internationals too. And I cannot think of anything more declaration, empowering. This is such a sacred task for us to create our own worldview, to decide it, to shape it, to make it work for us, to decide what should go in it, what our own values, our principles. And so I think this is just such a key part of it. To understand, as you have shown us, Sailesh, what the true impact of the lifestyle that we are given in the West to live, and how can we start to change it and shape it to where we collectively need to go. How can we declare this is our hero's journey, our life, each of us, and can we join hands, and can we steer, I think, the greatest engineering project in human history, as you mentioned. Can we become the thermostat species? Can we be the caretakers? There was a...
That's very hopeful.
And thank you for, I just want to mention that there was a Tewa women's solstice that we went to a couple of years ago.
Right.
And the Tewa women of the Santa Clara Pueblo. Dawn. And they were talking about their values, indigenous values, community, the planet, and all of this. And there was a beautiful woman who came from the inner city. And she stood up and she said, I had to come back to you, Tewa elders, because you had inspired me a couple of years ago at just such a gathering where you had mentioned the duty of our culture, the duty of men in our culture is to protect the women and children. And then it dawned on me that in my inner city, with all the gang and the violence and the drugs and the this and the that and the destruction, that these men did not even know what their duty was historically.
Oh, these young men without
young
mentors.
Lost men. So she said, I knew that food is the great attractor, the great for community around. We all break bread together. So I gave a breakfast, a vegan breakfast. I gave a breakfast, and they all came. And then I stood up and I was able to give the speech. I come from the Tewa women with a message. And the message is, men, you have forgotten your duty. Your duty is to protect the women and children, to build the culture, to make us safe and happy. What are you doing? And she said that the look on their faces, it dawned on them, because that is something that's built into us, into our DNA, right? And that this is a call to be the heroes that you're meant to be, that you're assigned to be. And I think that's true for all of us. We're called to be the heroes. We're called in our culture, in our DNA, we're called to be that. I just want to say that evolutionary forces have brought us here to this point. This is our task. We can do this, and we need to join hands to do this and be in community to do this. We need to be inspired. We need to hear the stories.
Right.
We need to dig down deep within each of us, right, and pull that up. What can we contribute? What can we do? Which shoulder can we put to the wheel to push it? What is our contribution? What is our destiny to do this? So and to push that fence over. I guess that was my point.
Thank you,
To
John
help
and
push the
Felicia.
fence over.
Yeah, thank you for that.
They just jump over the abyss.
Well, you know, in the presentation today, if you missed the beginning of the presentation, of course, we're going to share that again as a recording, but follow the work here. I mean, I think that this is something that's going to open up a lot of doorways. And, you know, and throughout this presentation, Sailesh, you referred to different principles that you gave a name to. And I'm thinking of something as I listen to you, and it's called the Gandhi principle. It takes one person with a vision and a focus to continue taking steps forward, one step at a time. And that's what you're doing. And I'm hoping the rest of us can be inspired to take our role with that Gandhi principle, that each of us have a role, one step at a time, to participate in this change that needs to happen, and for us to give humanity that opportunity to heal itself. It's about the healing.
Thank you so much for the opportunity actually to come and speak to you all about this.
Yeah.
And you know, I am, as I told you, I am trying to fulfill a promise that I made to my granddaughter. And to me, that is paramount in my mind, that she needs to have a vegan world by 2026. Because when I explained to her the theory of evolution, and she started bawling her eyes out, realizing that animals are her family. And I realized I had created a world full of monsters for a little child. And no child should ever grow up in a world full of monsters. You know, so this is why I'm driven by this. You know, so I made her a promise, and I consider that to be a very sacred promise that my generation made to her generation, that we are going to sort this out. We're going to leave them a world that they can thrive in.
And Sailesh, I mean, that inspiration coming from your granddaughter, I mean, coming from the youth, that's where it has to come from. I think all of us have family members, we have relationships, and we understand that this generation is questioning us and saying, what did you guys do? Say, okay, we know, we're sorry,
Step
but
up.
we'll do our part. We'll do our part. We'll try to do our part and step into the circle of contributors. And so again, I want to thank you for your presentation today. And again, those of you that didn't catch the beginning of the presentation, it's fabulous. He has 30-something slides taking us through a very logical sequence of progression of understanding. Sequence. I got two words together there. Progression of ideas to be able to put this in perspective. And it's a powerful, powerful message. So.
Thanks for all the good work you do. Keep it up. And yeah.
Blessings to you all. Thank you for taking the time today to get the message, and let's talk more. Let's stay in touch on these types of conversations. Sailesh, good work.
Thank you so much.
And blessings to you and your granddaughter and your family.
Thank you.